Hello everyone and welcome to our Open Dev talk on how to get consent to collect connected car data from individual drivers. I'm Anissa Semai and I'm Customer Success Manager at High Mobility.
And my name is Yannick Lober. I'm managing business development at High Mobility. In our today's fourth Open Dev talk, we want to explain how to obtain driver's consent and how you can meet both legal and technical requirements. At first, I will explain some important terms and aspects in regards to the legal requirements, and then I will hand it over to Anissa, and she will walk you through the high mobility consent flow, and she will also give some guidance and hints about the integration. So at High Mobility, we are providing brand independent connected car data. This data you can use for your own application, for your services. For example, if you like to build a digital logbook solution or a pay-as-you-drive insurance offering, you can consider us as a valuable data source. It's important to understand that we are solely focusing on personalized vehicle data. So you always know which car is sending, for example, the current mileage or the geolocation data values. We do not offer any kinds of anonymized data. We are identifying the vehicles by their vehicle identification number, the VIN, and it's also crucial to understand that in some countries, this vehicle identification number is perceived as being a personal data item. Before you can retrieve connected car data, you have to ask for permission. And this process will ensure that the driver is proactively accepting the data transmission. And it's also important to understand that you cannot collect data without any acknowledgement from some random drivers. But no worries, it's a one-time process. So you do not need to ask for permission every time you do a request. It's just a initial step that needs to be done. And at High Mobility, we are providing both legal and ready-to-use technical components that make it really easy for you to capture consent for collecting connected car data. Here you can see at this slide that we are both providing connected car data for fleet-related purposes and for services that cover individual driver purposes. In today's Open Dev talk, we are focusing on the second option. So we explain how the consent management will work for individual drivers or personal owned vehicles only. So let's take a look at some legal aspects. And all the parts that you can see on this slide are mainly derived from the GDPR, which is the single set of data privacy laws here in the EU. And it essentially says that whenever a company likes to process personal data, it must ask for permission first. And this process is called consent or the consent flow under the GDPR umbrella. So it means that users need to have a clear choice if they want to share the data with your company. And it also means that the scope needs to be as specific as possible. In our context, that means that we need to list all the vehicle-related data points to be as specific as possible. And our users or your customers, they also must take specific action to signal their consent. This can be as easy as ticking a checkbox on a website or signing a document. And to make things very transparent, the consent flow needs to include who is processing the data, why you are processing the data, and for which and what purposes the data is used. So imagine you are a company that provides a digital logbook solution. then you have to give your company name as a reference. You have to state that you are tracking the geolocation and mileage for crafting this digital journey overview. And if you use the data also for other purposes, then it's important that you are listing those use cases as well. Last but not least, you users always need to have the option to withdraw the consent later on. Next up, I want to introduce two more GDPR terms. The first one is quite straightforward. It's the data subject. The data subject describes the person who is associated with the data, and this can only be applied to living individuals. And in our context, this is the driver or the vehicle owner. And the second one is the data controller. Data controllers are the key decision makers. So they do have the overall say and control over the reason and the purposes behind the data collection. They must demonstrate full compliance with all data protection principles. And this includes multiple duties like setting up clear purposes, contexts, and scopes. They also need to manage all data-related risks, and they need to implement organizational and technical security measures. For example, they need to have the consent capturing flow if they want to process personal data. At High Mobility, we are looking at a three-sided relationship. So first, we have the cars of the data subjects, and those cars are sending data to the OEMs. Then we, as High Mobility, we are using the OEM backend systems in order to provide the data to our customers. So every relationship is grounded on a clear contractual basis. For instance, High Mobility has direct contracts with different brands and OEMs to manage, for example, the availability, support levels, future extension, things like that. And then we, of course, also do have rights and obligations between us at High Mobility and our data customers. And those are defined in our car data terms of use and the end customer conditions. All documents are publicly available. And to facilitate the process, we have explained them in plain English, as you can see on the screenshot on the slide. So finally, this is the overview that shows the overall controller relationship. So the data subject first needs to give consent to High Mobility in order to share the data with our data customers by accepting the end customer car data terms. In a second step, an additional consent needs to be given to the OEM to share the data with High Mobility for the underlying and respective purpose. And rights and obligations between High Mobility and the OEMs are handled in our individual contracts with them, and those conditions are then passed on to our data customers in our B2C car data terms. While this might look very complicated, Anissa will further explain how simple it is to use the High Mobility consent flow and to meet all those requirements that I've just explained.
Yes, thank you, Yannick, for all the very nice information. Indeed, we provide a consent flow, which is an OAuth 2 based authorization flow in order to capture the consent for individual car owners and your end user. So when you would implement this flow, which is auth URL on which you would get your end customer or your user to be redirected to, they will see the following. So I will play this video and show you step by step how the flow will look like. Here, for instance, this is an example when a customer would add a Mercedes-Benz vehicle. So first, we will need from the end user to sign in or to create a driver account. A driver account will enable your end user to visualize and administrate the permissions they have given related to connected car data. And so for this step, we will require them to simply enter their email address on which they wish to create an account and the country they are based in. The driver account creation will then be succeeded when the end user will define his password. So he will receive a link to the email address he has given in, and so the flow is not interrupted. So here in the consent flow, he will only need to give the email address, and the flow can move on. So we are making this as smooth as possible. Here, these are the different links on the terms and conditions and privacy policy that Yannick mentioned previously, on which we ask your end user in the end to agree on. Next, he will hit create, and this will generate the email for the driving account. And he will choose for which brand his vehicle he wants to add. And here, for instance, if on your side you already have this information, you are able to include the brand information in the OAuth parameter, and so you don't need your end user to specify it. So you can make this flow a bit easier, and but here, in this example, we still require them to choose Mercedes-Benz. Next up, we will need for them to enter the VIN number of their vehicle, so the vehicle identification number, as mentioned previously. In case your end user is not he's not aware of where to find this VIN, there is here a link on which he will find more instructions on where to find it. Again, if you on your side already know this information, you are able to parse into the auth URL, and so you can skip this step and make the process smoother. Next, we will show to your customer, to your end user, which data you have selected on the high mobility side and which data you want to get access to. Here on this example, we can see that you are asking for vehicle location data points or diagnostic related data points, etc. So here this is transparent and clear to your end customer. Seeing this, the end user will then agree on the terms and on the data points, and he will hit continue. At last, as mentioned previously, we are here, the consent needs to be given toward high mobility, and this is where this is achieved. And then the consent or end user needs to give consent on the OEM side. This is why we have, for this example as well, we redirect the end user to the OEM platform on which he will be able to log in and again give consent to that same data points we are requiring access to. So that's the consent flow itself. This is the example for Mercedes-Benz. So as you can see, you can integrate it in a very easy way. And this, in order to integrate it, you need some credentials that I will show you in a minute, where to find them, and I will show you as well some more information, the documentation on how to specify a bit or customize this consent flow in order to make it easier for your end user. So first you will need to go to our platform if you haven't done it already or registered. So on highmobility.com you will need to log in. and access to our platform here. So where to find the OAuth credentials? So here we are talking in the use case where you would get real vehicles connected to a solution. Therefore, you would need to go to the Live Data tab and access and create a Live Data app container. If not already done, you can hit Create New and choose a Cloud App type of data container if your dashboard or your platform is web-based. So here I will show you a quick example of a live data container that I already created. I have chosen as a permissions as data points the vehicle location and the odometer. And this means that if I will integrate the consent flow, I will ask my customers or my end user to get access to only these two data points. So this is the idea. If you have different services, if for example you want to provide a pay-as-you-drive type of insurance, then you would only require from your customers the odometer or eventually a bit more information. But we are following here the GDPR minimal principle. Here on the OAuth client tab, this is where you will find the OAuth 2 credentials that you will need to implement the auth URL. When your end user will be redirected to the consent flow, you would need them to go back to your solution. You will need to go back to your app after giving consent. And for that, you can specify or enter the link, the URL to your own platform or application so that the flow will be completely automatized and so they will come back to your own solution. From here already, you can access to the OAuth 2 related documentation. This is rather technical, but you can also access to it. If I go back to our platform, you are able to reach to our documentation from here as well. So here I go on the OAuth 2 user consent documentation. And what I want to show you is here. So this is the parameters you will need to input for your auth URL. So these are the credentials that you will find as shown previously. And in order to make this consent flow a bit easier, here are mentioned which parameter you can even enter. So these are optional ones. But if you know previously already the brand of your end customers, then you might just pass it in the OAuth so they don't need to input it. So it could be much easier. So at last, what I would also recommend you to do is to have a look into our OEM related guides. So here we are providing a bit more information and you are able, let's have a look in Ford, you are able to see the related consent flow for each brand. So again, a recap. So this is the driver account creation step, etc., etc. So here you will have step by step shown the consent flow you would integrate for each OEM. Here, I already mentioned it. If for your end user is not able to or are not aware on where to find a VIN, as you can see, your pop-up window is available for them. And here, these are the permissions that they will see, etc., etc. So in the end, in order to capture consent, you would only need to redirect your customer to an URL that you can customize. And yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.